Welcome, everyone. Thank y'all so much for coming. This is the first of quite a few meetings throughout the informational meetings given by quite a few different people. We want to thank them for everything they've done. And this is the Terrebonne 200-year bicentennial celebration, celebrating 200 years of growth and achievements in Terrebonne Parish. With that, I'd like to do the opening prayer. Chief August Crapel with the United Homer Nation. Please stand.
Relito, Omasia, Yupiche, Miko Mas, Okata and Sihili. That's the language of the original Homers that hasn't been spoken over 100 years. The Homer people been in this area since the beginning of it for 200 years. And I'm the chief of the United Homer Nation, August Crapel, like he said. Thank you for having me here, and if you join me in prayer. Heavenly Father, we come before you, Lord Jesus. We come before you to lead us and guide us, Lord, to serve you and serve all our people of Terrebonne Parish. Father God, we just thank you and praise you for this wonderful day. We thank you for this gathering. Again, lead us and guide us to serve you and serve all our people. In this name we pray, amen.
Amen. Okay, and if we could have Mort Black come lead us in the pledge. Yes. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First, I want to thank everyone for coming, and I'd like to announce the elected officials that are present today, and acknowledgments to Terrebonne General, Jam Up Marketing, LaBeouf Brothers Towing, Edison Schwess Offshore, Gulf Island, United Homer Indians, Logan Babbitt Incorporated, Bayou Terrebonne, and Martin Falls with HTV. We thank Martin for putting it on. And the council members, Chairman Darren Guidry, Vice Chairman Jessica Domingue. We have Dirk Guidry, Danny Babin, and we have David LaBeouf, Michelle Claudet, ex-parish president, and Christian Bergeron with Garrett Gray's office. We want to thank everyone for coming. And with that, we have Jules Hebert, parish attorney here. Did I miss anyone? If I did, I apologize. You know, what a great celebration, 200 years of Terrebonne Parish. Actually, in 1822, April of 1822 was the first police jury meeting. I think it's April the 8th, which is tomorrow. We've seen Terrebonne grow to 115,000 people. The industry of fishing, shrimp, and oyster and crabs, what at the beginning of Terrebonne Parish, the naturally oil and gas, medical, marine industry, and other industries followed. We saw the Intercoastal Canal built through Terrebonne Parish in the 50s, along with the Homer Navigation Canal, which brought industry. We saw the last 15 years a massive output to build a protection system for hurricanes for Terrebonne Parish. The people of Terrebonne Parish tax themselves 3/4 cent sales tax and a millage, and along with the state of Louisiana, we've got over $1.4 billion either constructed, under construction, or going to construction in Terrebonne Parish. Along with in the last 6 years, we've built 30 pump stations, 2 lock systems. The Homer Navigation Canal lock system is actually under construction, which is a $360 million lock system that was funded by the BP oil fields. And I want to thank, the state delegation throughout the years that worked on this, and others that worked on this. Reggie Dupre, Tony Alford with the hurricane levee system, the hurricane levee board, Terrebonne levee board. And you know, we went from 15 years ago to having no protection to very good protection, as you can see with the hurricanes that hit us throughout the year. We've seen Barrier Island's over $300 million in Barrier Island construction going on as we speak, and completed on Whiskey Island, Raccoon Island, which is segmented breakwater rocks. Timberlake Island is under construction right now, of restoration construction, and Trinity Island. We've seen this government and the state government, and of course our congressional delegation, who we just received $379 million from the federal government to the Corps to start building a floodgate in the intercoastal in Lafourche, one in Terrebonne, a floodgate at Humboldt Canal, one at Miners Canal, and finishing the Reach A. And I see Tony Alford just walked in, so I want to, Tony Alford, president of the levee board, I want to announce him. And we've seen the transformation of Terrebonne to go to no protection to unbelievable protection. With the addition of 30 pump stations, we went from 10,000 cubic foot per second 6 years ago to 16,000 cubic foot per second, which pumps and drains your homes as we speak. We saw Ida come in at 223 miles an hour, hit Fouchon, worst devastating hurricane in the history of Louisiana, and a bullseye was naturally Fouchon and caused Pointe-à-Cher and Terrebonne Parish. We saw winds of 185 miles an hour of what they call reverse headwinds. So we saw the transformation of, besides southern winds we were always concerned about, we knew there were going to be reverse headwinds, but not to the tune of 185 miles an hour with 12 to 14 foot seas in the HNC. And of course the system did well. We had some trouble with the Bubba Dub floodgate that we had to repair. And of course the lock system will alleviate that problem that's under construction for $360 million. And you know, we've seen the segmented rocks on Whiskey Island, which is a big push of myself and others. You know, and we've along with Boganza to the Gulf, we've got 13 floodgates that's built to a plus 18, and Terrebonne's going to a budget of $239 million with millions of dollars of construction under construction as we speak. We lost 4 parish presidents: Bobby Bergeron, Barry Bonvillain, Bobby Lyons, and Teddy Dewey out of 7. There's 3 parish, myself who's elected, and 2 other parish presidents that are still alive. So we've seen the transformation from the police jury to consolidated government, which has been very successful. And we've moved Terrebonne forward with a lot of the help of people in this. We have diversified. We're diversifying more. We're moving into quality of life programs with the Sportsplex that the government, that Terrebonne Parish Consolidated Government has built up. As you can see, a beach out there, fishing docks. With Rec 2-3, we built the baseball fields. We're adding on to the soccer fields with lights. Actually, that's bids going out next week. And of course, along with the drainage projects and road projects, and we presently we plan to fund this year the engineering to go from Val High at Savannah Road all the way to Highway 90 to help alleviate traffic. So we hadn't forgot about our roads and bridges. We still have a lot of small concrete bridges to replace. And we saw destruction of a lot of camps, houses, buildings during Hurricane Ida, but it's well under constructed. We have 3,500 trailers that people are living in now. We still have a ways to go on that. We've issued over 10,000 permits to people of Terrebonne Parish, and we're moving forward. And we've come a long way. Started 200 years ago, and my hat's off to my department heads and all the people that work for Terrebonne Parish government. They've done a wonderful job. Our delegation in Baton Rouge, and of course our federal delegation in Washington. So with that, I thank everyone for coming, and I'd like to turn it over to the council chairman, Darren Guidry, to say a few words, and then Jessica Domingue, and then we'll start the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Dove. As chairman of your legislative branch in Terrebonne Parish, I'm happy to welcome you all here. Sometimes in order for us to see where we're going, we have to look back at where we've come from and where we've been. And I think this series is going to give us a good indication of what 200 years ago people in Terrebonne Parish might have been thinking. Mr. Dove mentioned all the hurricane protection and everything that is going on and that we have right now. But what were people thinking 200 years ago? 200 years ago, the forecasting wasn't even good. They didn't even know. The wind was starting to pick up. They might not have even known what was coming, and much less the flooding that their homes were perhaps experiencing. Imagine what business was going through 200 years ago. So I think this is going to be pretty good as we go through the series to really get an indication of where Terrebonne Parish has come from, and then we can look more at where we're going to be. And I think we've accomplished a lot over the last 6 years. I think we have a lot more to come, but I'm anxious to see Terrebonne Parish's history, as I'm sure you all are, because we weren't around here 200 years ago. So I am anxious to learn a lot, as much as you guys, about Terrebonne Parish's history, because I want to see us grow. Thank you. Ms. Domingue, you want to say something as vice chair?
Before that, I want to go ahead and add, I see some of my department heads in here. I want to thank Earl Hughes. We have a state-of-the-art EOC center out in Gray. Earl Hughes have done a wonderful job coordinating and doing an emergency. Dana Ortego with Human Resources. And also Candace Baldwin, the CFO of Terrebonne Parish, has done a wonderful job. She's a CPA in doing handling the money of Terrebonne Parish. With the community development block grant money, we are going after hundreds of millions of dollars. We have plans to build a new courthouse, a new jail, revitalize downtown, and cost a lot of quality of life things. And Candace has done a wonderful job. I cannot thank Debbie Ortego enough. She helped put all this together. She's the office manager of Terrebonne Parish. And of course, Bart Black over one of our most important things is coastal restoration, hurricane protection in our coastal areas. And Julius Abear, who's our parish attorney, that's done a wonderful job, him and his class. Plus we have other parish attorneys, like Michelle Neal, Vincent DeGate, and others, and also Steve Pondville, the public safety director. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Jessica Domingue, vice chairman of the council.
Thank you, Mr. Dove. Wow, 200 years. As I look around this room, I see a lot of familiar faces. Some of our leaders from the past who have brought us here, and some of our leaders from the future who are going to take us to the next step. And right now is time for us to start focusing on the next 200 years of Terrebonne Parish. And I would like to introduce a good friend of mine and one of those leaders that I know is going to be around for a very long time in Terrebonne Parish's future, Mr. Noah Lilleret.
All right, good evening. My name is Noah Lilleret. Welcome to our presentation, Good Earth, Good Business, and look back at 200 years of commerce in Terrebonne Parish. First, thank you, Parish President Dove, the TPCG, all our council members, and South Louisiana Financial Services for making this evening possible. Our presentation is a year-long series celebrating the bicentennial of our parish's establishment. Our Our presentation is on commerce, and it's pretty fitting that it be discussed first because it shapes everything about our community. Its landscape, its culture, quality of life, and its future. As we will see tonight, Terrebonne Parish has indeed been the good earth for many people seeking their fortune from all over the world. But a place of such abundance requires people of an industrious nature to master it. Consequently, many exceptional folks have left their lasting mark on Terrebonne. Our home has been a proving ground for new technology, a forerunner in international trade, a leader in natural resource development, as well as one of America's fastest growing cities at a time. As necessity is the mother of invention, hopefulness is the mother of progress. A spirit of optimism and excitement is apparent throughout the strides of development in Terrebonne Parish. That's not to say that the good earth has not experienced hardship. Plagues, fires, and hurricanes have all been endured, yet commerce has marched forward. That's because of all the good earth's natural resources, her most precious has always been her good people. Now, let's travel back to 1822 where it all started. We'll hear interviews from some of our pillars of our industries: agriculture, seafood, oil and gas, medical, military, fur trapping, logging, shipbuilding, tourism, and mercantile. Further, a narrated timeline will take us through our economy's peaks, valleys, transitions, and unintended consequences. We sincerely appreciate your attendance. Hope you enjoy this presentation and perhaps leave with a new appreciation for our parish. Thank you.
From 1800 to present time, much of the Houma Nation has made roots in Terrebonne and Lafourche parishes. However, issues with the denial of education and environmental disasters have caused movement throughout the years to St. Mary Parish, Jefferson Parish, Plaquemines, and St. Bernard parishes. The tribe has contributed to the commerce in the area by teaching early settlers the skills to survive off the land. Due to the forced migration of the Houma people, the tribe actually ended up with an advantage living next to waterways that lead directly to the Gulf, which in turn created direct access to areas where fishing, shrimping, and trapping were plentiful.
Well, you have to think, as far as shaping Terrebonne Parish, we were here when the Acadians came down. We were the first people of this area. We migrated south to an area in a sense that nobody wanted to come to, but it was our paradise because, we became a coastal people. And if you think about Thanksgiving, you hear about the Indians up north meeting the European people. Well, we did the same thing down here. We showed the Cajun people, the Acadian people, how to survive off of this land that was really, in a sense, different from their homelands. We have to, share. And, we've always been a people that have always been pretty friendly and sharing our knowledge. And so we shared, our way of life with the other people that came in as they would arrive here.
The waterways have given Terrebonne Parish its shape, but agriculture has provided the names of the places we know. Many of our current streets and neighborhoods are named for long-forgotten plantations and plantation owners. These include neighborhoods such as Evergreen, Myrtle Grove, Roberta Grove, Mandalay, Waterproof, Ellendale, and Mulberry, and streets such as Barrow, Belanger, and Senac.
Go back 200 plus years ago, a little before Terrebonne was really settled, and a man named Etienne de Boré, he actually invented the process of crystallization of sugar in what is now Alderman Park. Yeah, and that was where the sugar industry started in Louisiana. Now it's one of the biggest industries worldwide. And so sugarcane became a cash crop for the area where people could get actual money for their product instead of just eating it.
After the Civil War and Emancipation Proclamation of 1863, African Americans continued to be vital to the industry. Many continued to work on the plantations and were paid with plantation-specific tokens that could only be used at the plantation general store.
The 1860 census said there was about almost 7,000 slaves in 1860. So clearly, we moved from that, as Alvin referenced, whatever jobs were available, but we worked hard and contributed to those owners' well-being and growth. And look at us today.
Lee Yun of Canton, China, introduced the art of drying shrimp to Terrebonne Parish, offering a means of preservation prior to manufactured ice. Many know this early practice today as dancing the shrimp. While primitive, this method allowed Terrebonne to begin to tap into one of our most plentiful and sustainable industries still today.
Terrebonne Parish is abundant in natural resources, and we're close to the Gulf of Mexico and the Mississippi River. And so many years ago, people were migrating here for the natural resources, the lumber, the trapping, the fishing industry and such like that. And it just happened to be one of the most blessed places in the world that provides everything that somebody would need to be a fisherman.
Prior to about 1880, timber production in Louisiana was fairly small, meeting the local needs. Mills and logging were confined largely to areas along waterways. By contrast, the so-called second phase of lumbering, the industrial phase, was huge in its output. In 1880, Louisiana ranked 13th in the United States for the dollar value of its timber. By 1900, it ranked 10th in the nation, and by 1920, second. In the early 1910s, the state led the country in timber production. In 1910, Dilbert, Stark, and Brown Cypress Company established a sawmill in a small swamp town called Donner, Louisiana. They operated 2.5 miles of railroad using 60-pound rails with 2 locomotives, 26 logging cars, and 1 log loader. Donner, once a swamp, was drained by the sawmill company, becoming the metropolis of the northern part of Terrebonne Parish.
Louisiana officials chose to develop a market for muskrat fur and protect its supply through management laws. The state sought the cooperation of trappers to maintain global demand, but when Edward Avery McHenry released nutria alongside the muskrat, the ecological balance of the marsh was permanently altered. Businesses in the seafood industry paired fur trading with seafood sales as a way to make a living. Bloom and Bergeron Seafood Company of Terrebonne Parish is a perfect example. With the increase in demand for dried shrimp, fur trading at Bloom and Bergeron slowly began to dissipate. Muskrats shrank into obscurity, and trappers struggled to embrace the nutria as a substitute. The Louisiana muskrat industry, starting with its rise in the 1890s, continuing through its years as a leading fur bearer
and ending with its replacement by the nutria in the 1960s.
Basically, when it started, it was a barter type of thing. My grandfather started, he was selling dry goods and whatever out of a buggy, in the Terrebonne Parish. He was working out of New Orleans. And he was coming here, people were building stores and dry good places, but they didn't have any money, and it was that barter which helped promote that industry. So as the industry started growing, he would sell dry goods to these people, and they would have other foods to eat besides what they produced here. And he would take the dried shrimp, they had dried shrimp to barter with it, and he would take it and trade it in the French market. So he decided, well, heck, that industry, he was making enough money in it, so he decided to just go into the dried shrimp industry.
In the early 1900s, mosaic disease wiped out more than half of the sugar production in the parish. Southdown Plantation, with the help of the USDA and LSU Agriculture Center, is accredited with saving the Louisiana sugarcane industry from extinction by providing cane that was resilient to the disease. Research and innovations in the industry continue today at the Sugar Research Center that is still located on property that was once Southdown Plantation.
Because of a mosaic disease that hit the sugar industry. It decimated the industry. It brought it down, I don't know how much, but I'm saying less than half of the production because of this one disease called mosaic. Well, the Sugar League was formed back then, and they were able to get rid of this disease through breeding, plant breeding. And the facility we have here in Houma started it.
The first discovery of oil and gas in Terrebonne Parish dates back to the early 1900s. In 1904, the Pickard and Hayward brothers discovered an oil field on the Leo Lorette farm. Shortly after, in 1909, the Bush Petroleum Company discovered another field near Montague, which later became known as the Magenta Well. It wasn't until some 20 years later that the Texas Company, which most of us now know as Texaco, signed a land lease with the Louisiana Land and Exploration Company and began mobilizing equipment to drill for oil and gas.
When the first oil well was drilled, I'm just thinking, first oil well was drilled in Louisiana in 1901 in Jennings, Louisiana. That's where kind of the oil and gas industry started out in Louisiana. And then you fast forward a little bit, you go back into I think it's 1940 when they drilled the first. Of course, they had drilled some land wells already before that, but in 1940 they drilled, I think, the first offshore well. It progressed from there, and I mean, there was so much happened in the oil and gas industry fairly quick, with the oil deposits. You started drilling for oil and gas, and and this is where we are today.
In 1943, the World War II Naval Land Installation was established at the Houma Airport. It served as a blimp hangar and conducted surveillance of German U-boat activity in the Gulf of Mexico. After the war ended, the federal government transferred the Naval Land Installation to the local government by way of a quit-claim deed. The property, now called the Houma Terrebonne Airport and Industrial Park, is leased to the general aviation and industrial tenant.
In the 1930s, many Terrebonne Parish workers gave up farming, fishing, and logging and shifted their focus to support the needs of oil and gas companies. Such services included land surveying, lease negotiation, equipment manufacturing, piloting, and catering services, to name a few. In the 1940s and 50s, Texaco remained Houma's largest employer. Lake Pelto became the mecca of oil and gas production, and many new companies began to mobilize their operations in Terrebonne Parish. Given oil discoveries were starting to be made further out in deeper waters, civic and business leaders pushed for the dredging and completion of the Houma Navigational Canal, which allowed for better access to the Gulf of Mexico. As a result, many offshore exploration companies and related service providers set up shop in Houma, and the population expanded exponentially.
In 1946, Terrebonne Parish grew rapidly and exceeded the bed capacity of the hospital. Therefore, the need for more services was on the mind of the Terrebonne Parish Police Jury. In 1950, Tulane graduate students were hired by the Houma Terrebonne Chamber of Commerce to conduct a public opinion poll, asking the question, what are the greatest needs of the city of Houma and the civil parish of Terrebonne? The message was loud and clear, a hospital. So in 1950, upon the recommendation of the medical community and facts presented by Tulane graduate students, the police jury authorized the construction of Terrebonne General Hospital.
Doctors have always been here, and it's always been a big part of the parish, taking care of them. And certainly, if you look at the growth of hospitals, we had only one hospital when I came, and now there are two big hospitals which have every facility known to medicine. I think that it tells you the importance of medical practice and medical care in our community. I got my daddy's charge cards, and he would pick them up, and when he first started practicing back in the 30s, it was like 25 cents, 50 cents for an office visit, or ice chest of shrimp, or a couple of crabs, or whatever. And then we kind of progressed, and he kind of increased in his costs. When I came to Houma, an office visit was $5. And when we delivered a baby, I would take care of the mother for the entire 9 months. We'd see her every month, and then every week in the last week. And if she'd have a boy, we'd take care of the baby in the nursery and do the circumcision. The entire price of that from day one till delivery and circumcision was $125. And we did that for a long time before third-party pay came in, and certainly we increased that. But I don't think we ever got much higher until we stopped delivering babies, much higher than $300 or $400 for a delivery. So prices have really changed. I'm so all of women know that they don't pay $125 or $300. The hospital bills were very cheap back then, and when you had a baby or you were in the hospital, you could stay in the hospital as long as you want. They didn't tell you had to be out in 24 hours. Yeah. So if you wanted to have your baby stay in the nursery for 4 or 5 days and you wanted to recuperate, you could stay 4 or 5 days. We used to be able to admit a patient to the hospital for a complete diagnostic workup. Put them in on a Monday, they'd have a barium minimum, upper GI, x-rays, gallbladders, all that stuff done, be finished by Tuesday, and they'd go home, but everything was done in the hospital. Can't do that anymore. The insurance companies put great restrictions on what we can and cannot do.
In 1960, the combination of rich oil production, backed by Houma's productive seafood waters, fertile soil, and natural mineral resources makes Houma one of the fastest growing cities in America. In 1961, the Houma Navigational Canal was completed, providing a 30-mile link from the Intercoastal Canal to Terrebonne Bay and the Gulf of Mexico.
With the oil deposits, it created a lot of jobs, created a lot of companies to come in to service those jobs. A lot of people moved in. It created a lot of construction in homes, and the banking industry took off. Medical was already here, but that's pretty much how it shaped. With the oil and gas deposits that they had on land and offshore. That's where it all started.
The population has exploded in Terrebonne Parish, and it's because the living conditions are good, and they've always had some work to do, and it's been in the oil and gas business, no doubt about it. The largest industrial subdivision in the state of Louisiana. We had 10,000 acres of land that Jim Walter, who owned the Jim Walter Corporation, who owned South Coast Corporation, who was the people that are buying Wallace's sugar. And so we started transferring sugarcane land into industrial subdivision. And we, as a test project, we developed about 150 acres over on By Large, and that sold before we ever got it ready to sell, to tell you the truth. So we decided we would switch over to Grand Kaya, and had railroad available, and we thought that would be a really great asset. Turned out to be nobody ever used it. But we cut the cypress swamp, and we dug a slip, which was 1 mile long and 300 feet wide, as big as the Houma Navigation Canal. And we filled up about 400 acres of property and made it to where you could eventually walk on it. And we sold that property to basically oil field, big oil field.
The 1980s proved to be much more challenging for those employed in oil and gas. The price of oil went from $30 a barrel in 1985 to $10 a barrel in 1986. Unemployment rose to 25% and the local economy crashed. Bank foreclosures rose with real estate prices having crashed. It wasn't until the early 1990s that Houma Terrebonne saw a rebound in the oil economy.
In 1979, 80, 81, that's when the industry started going down. And at that time, we had probably about 75, 80 employees. And by 1983, when things change like that in the economy, and you just gotta adjust yourself to the level of business you have. So we dropped from 75 employees just roughly to probably 18 employees. And those 18 employees were working 7 and 7. So it was a tough, challenging time, but you just have to work through it and get down to the level of what the business is at the time, and that's what it was in our particular business. It was 100% oil and gas.
While Houma is only an hour drive away from one of the world's top tourist destinations, New Orleans, the unique culture and landscape wouldn't come into popularity until the 1980s. After a much-needed boost of capital to the tourism advertising budget and increased access to the area, the parish rose to the top 25% in tourism revenue and remains there. In 1980, we see the beginning of what would become a larger industry in swamp tours with the start of Annie Miller's Swamp and Marsh Tours, created because of the downturn in the oil field industry. The tour's popularity spread not just throughout Louisiana, but also the entire country and overseas, being featured in national and European publications. In the same period, the area's access to rich offshore fishing gained fans with record number of visitors brought in for charter boats and guided trips. The oil platforms create a unique environment that attracts anglers from all over the world, with higher numbers of non-resident fishing licenses sold than any other parish, and frequently the most registered boats.
Well, tourism in Terrebonne Parish, we have different aspects. You know, it comes from our fishing, our Mardi Gras, culture, heritage, food. But I think the biggest impact that we have seen over the years is the Mardi Gras. Mardi Gras in Houma is known as the second largest Mardi Gras parade in Louisiana, and it dates back to the 1800s. So Mardi Gras is a big economic driver, but however, one of the best thing that happened in Houma, Louisiana as tourism was Alligator Annie had created the first swamp tour in Louisiana, and she was sought out by a variety of international visitors, and you know, still today her operation's been in business since 1980. So Houma was the first and only swamp tour at that time.
The 90s and 2000s saw a renaissance in oilfield technologies that allowed for companies to drill in depths of water over 4,000 feet. Many of these technologies were pioneered by local business owners and leaders from Terrebonne Parish. Gulf Island Fabrication and its subsidiaries were a major employer and contributor to deep water exploration.
What I've seen mostly is a switch over from freestanding industrial properties, like somebody like Delta would buy a piece of property and they would locate wherever they wanted to. And it could be that they would locate next to some subdivision houses and whatnot, which is not really a good idea. But it's now beginning to look like, and it has for quite a number of years, started to cluster in industrial parks. I would say we were the second one in Terrebonne Parish. The first one was by the Prospect Street Bridge, and that was developed by Steve Hebert. And then we started our subdivision, and we developed about 3,000 acres. Most of that's all sold now. And then the subdivision started popping up in various places, but that has been the main change, I think, is the location in their own areas where they don't interfere with anybody else.
In 2010, an explosion occurred offshore, resulting in the death of 11 workers and injuring an additional 17. Known as the Deepwater Horizon spill, a federal moratorium on offshore drilling was enacted, and roughly 10,000 folks were temporarily unemployed. As is common in Terrebonne Parish, our citizens remained resilient, and the oil field began to recover, With the advent of technology, a record number of barrels were produced in the Gulf, which allowed the country to become a major influencer in the international supply of oil and gas.
In my industry, you know, when I took over, we had, which was around 2000, 2007, something like that, when I took over. We had 4 hurricanes in a row, right as soon as we took over. It destroyed all of our industry altogether. We had no way of making any money. Those people down the bayou were so resilient, they came back as fast as they could. We went back into business. We faced an oil spill right after those 4 hurricanes, which pretty much devastated everything because you know, everything was polluted. And we've overcome that.
In 2013, Levac Shipyards acquires Tidewater's Marine Quality Shipyards. 2018, Gulf Island is awarded the first of 3 regional class research vessels for Oregon State University, with the last being awarded in 2019. These vessels will be utilized to advance the science of coastal environments and support research on topics such as ocean acidification, hypoxia, and sea level rise. And a deal that enhanced the position as the largest privately owned shipbuilder in the United States acquires the assets of the shipyard division of Gulf Island Fabrication in the year 2021.
Going forward, and we talked a little bit about diversifying the economy. A lot of people talk about the economy. What can you do to help economic development and all? Well, in my opinion, our economics and our parish is pretty well developed. That's just my personal opinion. Pretty well developed already. The question is, how do you diversify into other industries and draw capital into our area from manufacturing company that may want to relocate and stuff? Well, when you put the word tourism in there, and that was one of the things they talked a lot about in the 80s. Well, to increase tourism in the area, I think everybody knows that cosmetics means a lot. How you build stuff, you know, how consistent, you know, make things look, lack of a better word, pretty, or whatever, you know, your environment, you know, you gotta spend money there doing that if you're gonna get tourism in there, right? When you go look at a place, first thing you know is the cosmetics, or how good it looks.
So tourism in Terrebonne Parish has generated over $160 million in visitor spending. They produced $21 million in state and local taxes, $60 million in direct earnings, 2,180 direct jobs. And then if it wasn't for those state and local taxes that was collected by the hotel motel taxes and tourism, each household would have to pay $520 in additional taxes. So tourism is definitely an economic driver for Terrebonne Parish.
So certainly we've come a long ways, there's no doubt about it.
and show willingness to come with some of the organizations like the NAACP and the other organizations to help, to help us continue to grow as a single community and not necessarily a separated community.
But can we keep it up? Who knows? We have to survive because the price didn't increase relative to, our cost. So our production increases has kept us in business.
I am thoroughly happy about the collaboration of leaders and partners in this community right now who's gathering together to make and improve our quality of life. Because before, just the tourism bureau, we can only do so much, but we cannot do and move forward without our partners to help and bring this community to where it needs to be. We have a great community, we have great people, we have great heritage, and I think this area is popular to come and visit, and I think people who ever come in here is unique, and they would enjoy visiting here in Louisiana, in home Louisiana.
And we are facing worldwide competition in the fresh shrimp industries, and the oyster industries, and the fish industry, and stuff like that. But we have a little niche industry here with this dried shrimp, and we're nurturing it, and we have been doing it for a long, long time. For some particular reason, this area produces probably some of the finest dried shrimp ever made in the world, and still is producing it. Although our industry has shrunken, we still have this little industry. I cannot tell you what's going to happen in the next few years with it, because our industry is going to concern. But I can guarantee you, the people that are working in this industry, or whether they're here, or whether they're working in our industry, or whatever it is, they're very, very resilient, and they're going to survive these hurricanes and the COVID and the new thing with the inflation and such, and they will be so resilient, and Terrebonne Parish will survive and be part of the world as we know it today.
I think it's still the good earth, and if the federal government would leave us alone, I think we'd be in great shape. I don't think that's going to happen. But I do see us continuing to be a thriving community.
God willing, we get through things sometimes that we think we're going to end up, with nothing, but nothing sometimes may be plenty. So, and I'm still have a lot of hope for that industry over the next 15, 20 years or so. I think it may not be as robust, but who knows what it's going to do, right? But what we see is it's not going to be as robust as it was, but it's still going to be a vital part of Terrebonne Parish.
I think the future of Terrebonne Parish itself is, there's a lot of ifs, ands, and buts about going on in the future. And if you read about the oil industry and the seafood industry and the water recession and the sinking, and there's just so many issues that we have to look forward to the future. But as long as we have people living, and as long as we have people here, the medical industry is going to continue to be, I think, a very big part of Terrebonne Parish, both financially, economically, and in the life-saving endeavors that it continues to do today.
I think it's very important that everyone works together for Terrebonne Parish. Again, it means good earth, and we have good people here. And we have to make that extra effort for all our people. When one moves forward, everyone should move forward.
All right, y'all. As we've seen here tonight, there's a lot to be proud of in Terrebonne Parish's 200 years. The world's eye. Our parish has been home to pioneers, forward-thinking entrepreneurs, and titans of industry. It has suffered devastating natural and man-made disasters time and time again, yet one constant remains throughout. The good people of the good earth are willing and able to work together to get past any setback that inspires hope, which is the key ingredient for progress. In 200 years, industries have waxed and waned. The tide of prosperity has ebbed and flowed, but the compassionate, resilient people of our community will always keep the ship of Terrebonne afloat. Thanks again to Parish President Dove, our council members, TPCG, South Louisiana Financial Services for making this evening possible. Please stick around for a trivia segment where you might be able to win a prize. And with that, I'll give it to Ms. Jessica Dome.
Wow, what a fascinating presentation. I know I learned a lot watching that. Mr. Dove had to step out, but he did want me to make sure to thank Mr. Chris Pulaski. He's the chair of the festival and the vice chair of Planning and Zoning Committee for Terrebonne Parish. And honestly, we wouldn't be standing here right now if it wasn't for Mr. Chris Pulaski. He's been doing everything for us for the past 7 months. So, Chris, we really appreciate you. Mr. Carl Harding also, he stepped in a little late today. Miss Leilani Adams, she's in the back there. Thank you, Miss Leilani, for everything you did. She's saying, no, don't thank me. Mr. Reggie Dupre, we saw him walking in the back. Mr. Tony Alford, Mr. Dean Schwess, and Mr. Mary LaBeouf from the Terrebonne Parish Library. We also want to remind you guys that this is just the first of a series. Our next series is going to be on May 5th, and the title of that is going to be Cruising the Bayou. So thank you so much again for coming out tonight.